What is going on, everybody? This is Coach Coleman, Jesse Coleman, and you're checking into Breakthrough Blueprint, the podcast, where we help you tap into your full potential. What's going on? What's the deal? Super Bowl has passed. You know what? I'm gonna get into it. Like it had to been probably one of the worst Super Bowls that I've seen in a while. And shout out to the Patriots. They won. They got there, and we know that it was supposed to be the Denver Broncos in there. Now, we don't know if the play would have been better or what, but we do know that the Patriots should not have been there. And hell, let's just be honest. Even though the Seahawks has been, a great team through the season, they didn't really play to their full potential on the offensive side until third, fourth quarter. Now the defense elite. I mean, defense was elite, and shout out to Mike McDonald. He was a defensive coordinator at Michigan. Jay Harbaugh, he was at Michigan, and then Mike Morris, a few other players, AJ Barner from Michigan. So I was shouting, rooting for them. But yeah, it was a wild Super Bowl. I'm not gonna go into the halftime show though. That's gonna be start a whole bunch of bullshit. And I will say this: if you do not know that Puerto Rico is in the US, then you need to go back to school. And that's all I'll say about that because that is not what we're here for. That's not what we're going to talk about yet. It's just crazy what seeing some of the stuff you see on social media when it came to the halftime show and when it came to a lot of that stuff, which was crazy. And I made a Facebook post and it was a little bit wild, but for y'all that know me, that's how I am. And it was funny. I'm like, it's crazy how you publicly hate Bad Bunny, but you secretly follow all the big booty Latinas. So it's just funny that people will have hate for a certain group of people or stuff like that, but secretly they have a thing for them. And, we're not going to go there. But anyway, what's going on? I hope everybody had a good week. We're back for another solo episode of the pod. I got some people lined up. It's time for me to bring some guests back. It's time for me to, have people share what they're feeling, what they're going through. So I'm gonna, have that coming back on in a minute. But I kind of want to, go into piggybacking off of what we've been talking about over the past few weeks, right? I want to kind of like go into those things and we talked about we talked about standards, we talked about resistance, we talked about consistency, we talked about how when you have those hard weeks how you still have to show up. But I want to go into why those moments matter and why you know we struggle. you know it's just we just struggle with a lot of things. And I'm thinking while I'm talking, I'm just thinking about a lot of things, conversations I had with people, and even some of the stuff I went through. But we got to remember that growth is not glamorous. It is not pretty all the time. There's going to be phases where honestly that you're going to do everything right and you're still not going to see the results that you're looking for. And that's the part where most people actually quit, right? And we have to remember that everything is not going to be sunshine and roses. Everything is not going to be perfect. Think about working out. There's be times where you go to the gym every single day, right? You're eating right and you just still plateauing. You still not seeing the results you want to see. You still not getting where you want to get to. And again, that comes the part where people quit because they feel like, man, this it's not working. I'm doing everything, things are not working. But we got to remember that we always hit a plateau. We always hit certain points. And I want to go. I want to go a little bit deeper into that conversation. And to that point is that we know motivation is BS. We say this all the time. Yet when motivation fades, that's when your commitment must remain. Right? It's that quiet middle. It's that part in the middle. Is again, think about sports or thinking about when people are competing in boxing and MMA, where everybody only see when you get in the ring, but they don't see the behind the scenes. That's the commitment. They don't see when you're running 5, 6 miles a day, when you're going to the gym lifting, then you're going to sparring. They don't see that. That's when you have that commitment in the middle. And there's going to be some times where your results just haven't caught up with your effort yet. That's that part in the middle as well, too. Like the results and they haven't caught up to what you're doing. And that just goes along with the lines that we got to keep going. And we have to get used to that. Even people we know and love, there's going to be times when nobody's going to clap for you. There's going to be times when nobody's going to like your post. There's going to be times when nobody is, validating you and telling you you're doing good. And you have to be okay with that. You have to get used to that. That you have to be able to just turn it on from the inside and be okay with what you're doing and where you're trying to go. Now, last week we talked about that, you're not stuck. You just, you're looking for that breakthrough, right? But there is other time where the reason that you're not stuck, you're just early in the process. You're just early in the process. And the reason why this phase of things feels so heavy for us is because the first part is you don't have that instant feedback. When you don't have that instant feedback, when you don't have that instant success, that's when the doubt starts creeping in. And we have to be careful of how we're operating to not let that doubt takes us down the wrong path. Because that's what happened. It is taking down the wrong path. Once it started taking you down the wrong path, you start questioning yourself and not the process. Here's the thing, this is normal though. This is not a sign for you to stop. This is not a part where you just like, okay, I'm just going to give up. Don't doubt yourself. If you're showing up doing what you're supposed to do, that is not the time to doubt yourself. That is the time for you to take a look at the process and say, okay, let me look at this. For my people in the real estate business, right? When we talk about tracking our numbers, we talking about seeing what we're doing. This is the part in the process that's what you look at. You don't doubt yourself and your ability. You look at the process and say, oh, okay, I need to sharpen my skills on this. I need to do a little bit better at that. That is not the time that you start doubting yourself. We got to look at the process again. It is normal to be there. We've all been there. That's one of the things where you have what differentiates somebody who's winning and somebody who's a quitter. Remember, we talked about last week on the pod where things get boring. Doing the same things over again gets boring. Eating the same things get boring. Yet that's what winners do. Winners are okay with being bored. Winners are okay staying in that bubble to reach a goal that they want to reach. Winners are okay when things get a little bit quiet, when there's no crowd, there's nobody giving you high fives, there's nobody patting you on the back. Winners are okay with being in that. It's the quitters that start to leave when things get quiet. Now that comes back to what is your big why? Why are you doing what you're doing? If your why isn't big enough, then it's easy for you to quit when things get quiet. If your why isn't big enough, it's easy for you to just stop what you're doing and just say, okay, it is what it is. I'm moving on. And you hear this all the time, different ways people quote say it when they're quoting it, but talent does not separate people. It's the tolerance for discomfort that separates talent from people that win and people that lose. What's the quote? Oh my God, I'm finna forget it, but it's like talent outworks work when work doesn't. It's something like that. Y'all know what I'm saying. Now, don't beat me over the head for missing that. But again, it's not about talent all the time. It's about the tolerance for discomfort. It's about the person that's willing to put in the work on a consistent basis every single day. Right. Hard works outworks talent if talent doesn't work, right? There you go. I got it. So y'all ain't gotta. kill me in the comments. But there's so many talented people in the world, but they're not consistent. They don't put in the work. They're not okay with the discomfort, and they quit when things get a little bit hard. When there's nobody giving them instant gratification, when there's nobody patting them on the back, they decide to quit. One lie that we always tell ourselves too is that something is not working, right? That's what I would tell ourselves. Something isn't working. Here's the thing about it. Now, this is not a all the time thing. There are some times where shit just don't work, right? Let's just keep it real. We're not going to BS around. But often things are working, they're just working underneath. Perfect example. Y'all know I always talk about working out. For me, I've been lifting heavy, I've been bulking, so I've been eating. So that mean, my stomach is a little bit poking out. But here's the thing about it is you can you're working out, you're doing your core, you're doing those things, you're building muscle underneath. It's just it hasn't came to the forefront yet. Same thing with lifting heavy. You may not see the actual size, but you notice as you're lifting heavier. So things are working underneath. You have to remember the roots grow before results show. Before a tree has even started really getting that much bigger, the roots have already grown, and they created the foundation, they created stability. And we have to remember that as we're building ourselves up. That could be personal, that could be business, that could be any of those things. You're not going to see the progress at first. You're not. You're not going to see the progress first. I remember when I first started working out and I did not see anything. But I start feeling, my clothes start fitting differently. But I'm looking in the mirror like I don't see nothing. But everything starts working for itself. I started sleeping better. I started breathing better. I started doing other, I started being more clear minded. Like I didn't see the progress because everything was working internally first. And when we have to remember that, like it's an inside to outside job. Another part about when people quit, people leave. When you stay when shit is not sexy, bruh, you know what type of monster you are creating with yourself. When you're able to show up without the hype, like you are creating somebody that is ready to run through a brick wall, is ready to operate no matter what the conditions is. You're executing without emotions, right? We always talk about your standards. You trust the standards that you set for yourself. You know your standards are in alignment with your goals. Your standards are going to get to your goal. You trust the standards that you have set for yourself. And we talked about this last week that if you only show up when things feel good, you'll never build anything great. We already know Gary Keller says it all the time. Gary always say, "What can go wrong will go wrong. What can go wrong will go wrong." If you only show up when things are good, if you only show up when people are clapping, when everybody's there and doing all the things, you're not building nothing great. You're putting yourself in a position that when you finally hit that resistance, when you finally hit those speed bumps, you're not going to know what to do, and you're going to be ready to just call it a day. And you're going to be ready to wrap it up. A calm sea has never created what is it? A calm sea has never created a skilled sailor, something like that. When you lift weights, you are literally tearing the old muscles to build new, stronger muscles. A lot of times I felt like shit, like head hurt and feel good. I go to the gym, get a workout in, and I felt the best I ever felt. Because again, it's still showing up if you want to or not. It's still showing up if you feel good or you don't feel good. It's still showing up and and letting the universe know that you are serious about what you say you want. I want you to ask yourself this. Who am I becoming if I stay right here and don't quit? Ask yourself that. That is something, a journaling prop. That is something you could put on your window. That is something you can have as your screensaver. Like, who am I becoming if I stay right here and I don't quit? This is where you can lock in your identity. Like that question you ask yourself, this is what's going to build that discipline. This is what's going to build that confidence. This is what's going to build that self-respect for that you have for yourself, because you're like, hey, if I do not quit, this is the person I am going to become. That person I want to become has built confidence, have built that can withstand a resistance. That's not going to buck when a bump in the road come. I'm going to keep fucking going. So remember last week when I asked you all to make a goal for yourself, right? I mean one habit. Creating one habit. Here's my challenge to you from the challenge from last week. So this is a carryover from that one. One, don't change the goal. Don't change the standard. Don't fucking quit. Just stay consistent for 30 days. Remember? 30 days. Stay consistent. Don't change the goal. Don't change the standard. Don't quit. Now, here's the reason why we say don't change the standards. The goal will never change. The reason why we're saying don't change the standards right now, because you have to give yourself time in the process to see if it actually works or not. Right? You don't want to change it prematurely, right? You don't want to switch things up. So don't change the goal. Don't change the standard, but track what it is that you're doing. Track the standards, and then you're able to gauge and see, okay, I've done it over a period of time. I was consistent with it. Let me see if this thing work or not. All right. Again, I love you all for rocking with me. Thanks for checking into another episode of Breakthrough Blueprint to Podcast. Remember, don't change the goal. Don't change the standards. Don't quit. Stick it out. Let's see what happens. This is your boy, Coach Coleman, Jesse Coleman, checking in with another episode of Breakthrough Blueprint, the podcast, where we help you tap into your full potential. See you next week. Peace.